Doctors were kind of numbering my days.
There isn't enough money to pay you to look in the eyes of a dead child.
You need to scoop and run, which means that you need to pick them up off the street or out of the local ER and kind of run like hell.
Attention Engine 8, WPHQ 398, repeating, first responder for chest pain.
From the time of an accident to the time that person hits an emergency room or an operating room suite, the best chance of survival is within that 60-minute time window. But the reason why we're here is the patients have what's called the golden hour.
I've been with Air Evac for about 14 months now. I was in Vietnam for 13 months, started out as an infantryman and then had another MOS, which is your qualifications as an infantry medic, which you're an infantryman until something happens and then you become the medic. I was a medic over there, spent 13 months, volunteered to go, came back. They didn't have paramedicine or anything, so once I came back, I wouldn't have done that anyway. I got on a Harley motorcycle and rode for a few years, and then 19 years ago, I went to paramedic school, became a paramedic. Best day on the job as a flight paramedic is when we don't get a call, or we go to a call and they turn out to be okay. When you're young and doing this and you want to go to a good call, which we all feel, we don't want anybody to get hurt. But if they're going to get hurt, you feel like they've got their best chance if you're the one working on them. If you don't feel that way, then you probably won't stay in this very long. The working life of a paramedic is 4 years in 100,000 population or more because of what you see, what goes on and all. I love flying. So I could have been a flight medic 10 years ago in Fort Worth, but I just love the streets, so I waited till now.
From here? Be advised, we will be lifting off in a little bit. We're going to be transporting a patient from the hospital down to Parkland. The base opened approximately 22 months ago, and I was hired on as the lead paramedic when the base opened. It's a team. Matter of fact, I'll even go one beyond calling it a team. I'll say it is an individual working as two people, because you have to have the same thought process, you have to be on the same page, you have to have the same assessment skills for the most part, and be thinking down the same modality as far as treatment. So you have to work as one in back of the helicopter. It's like one person with 4 arms, 4 hands, you know.
And then this locks in down on the bottom. I'm a staff nurse with AirVac. I've been here about a year and a half now. We have to have 3 years critical care experience to become before you're even considered a flight nurse, and they have to have 3 years EMS in a high volume area, which would be Wichita or the Metroplex or something like that. I first started flight nursing out in Las Vegas, and so my first experience of being up in the air was quite scenic. Yeah, it was a nighttime flight, and we got to fly over the Strip. And so you had the lights and the scenery and stuff like that on the way to the scene. Of course, we got canceled, and so it didn't turn into a patient flight. But flying out in Las Vegas with the sunsets and the sunrises is probably the most memorable time I can think of.
This is the tail rotor, which is probably the most dangerous part of the aircraft. A lot of people think it pushes you through the air. No, it doesn't push that helicopter. What it does is an anti-torque device. Keeps you from spinning in the opposite direction that your rotor is rotating. I started flying in 1966, flew in Vietnam, got out of flying for a while, got back into it, loving it. In Vietnam, I was flying medical evacuations, going in and picking up the wounded and getting shot at pretty regular and all that. Well, here I'm going in picking up the people that are sick and injured. At least nobody's shooting at me yet. I've been shot down twice. I had a blade tip sling off in Florida when I was spraying orange groves. And though I wasn't flying the aircraft, my First week in country in Vietnam, I'd finished my check ride and the captain was taking his and I was riding in the back. We had an engine failure in that, so I've ridden 4 of them down to the ground. The aircraft is looked over pretty regularly. There's a lot of moving parts on there. It's the old saying, helicopters don't fly, they just beat the air into submission.
The first of every month, we have the duty that is on crew. Whoever it is, whoever is lucky enough to be working that day, has the responsibility of doing the what we call the monthly drug expiration checkoff. And every drug, every piece of equipment, every expendable medical item that we have, and most of it has expiration dates, has to be gone through and checked.
I think the major reason for pushing for aeromedical capability within the community is location. And secondly, the location of our hospitals that we have a partnership with out in the rural communities. I think that sometimes communities don't understand the degree to which their isolation puts them at risk. And I think that's something that's kind of tough to deal with, because nobody wants somebody from the big city to go out and say, you know, if your tractor rolls over you in the middle of the afternoon and there ain't nobody to bring you to definitive care, you're probably not going to survive. Now that's tough. Nobody wants to be confronted with their own potential mortality, but that's pretty much what it is.
Vietnam provided some incentive as a way to give back instead of take. I love this job because it makes me get up every morning and truly understand how fragile this life is. I get up and I go griping about my bills and about this little thing and that. You realize how insignificant it is. Your first call of the day, and you have a couple that's been married for 20 years and they're each other's everything, and all of a sudden one of them has a heart attack and they're pumping on their chest. All of a sudden that bill doesn't seem too important, or your voice are breaking down or whatever. Life's short, life's a wonderful thing, but it is so fragile. We always think it's going to be the other guy, and one day you look up and you are the other guy.
The reason why we're here is the patients have what's called the golden hour. From the time of an accident to the time that person hits an emergency room or an operating room suite, the best chance of survival is within that 60-minute time window.
Toughest day on the job? About 6.5 hours in that cockpit. Couple of long days. We had a couple of pretty good flights morning and got a flight in that afternoon to go down south to Knox City all the way into Lubbock. I started at about 6:30 in the morning and finished up at Lubbock just before my 12 hours was up, and flew it on back here, and it was a long day.
They did an MRI and some x-rays. They found fluid built up around my femur and my left leg. And at first they thought it was either cancer or a tumor forming. And so they put me in the hospital, did some tests all week. And toward the end of the week, they were kind of in between cancer and a staph infection. Well, I had staph infection in my left leg. That's when they decided to fly me to Baylor University down in Dallas. Once I got down there and they found out what it was, doctors were kind of numbering my days. I was off work for 3 months, and I had a IV line put in my arm where they had to give me some medicine twice a day through that IV line. It killed the infection off, and all the major stuff's gone now.
If it's wrong, we don't get a second chance. The patient doesn't get a second chance. And we're critiqued from everybody. We're our own worst critiquer. I mean, we just... the thing I fear most is going out there not knowing enough. So I'm constantly studying, trying to make that as my buffer against the fear. When we finish a call or you take them over the ER, you have the nurses, the doctors, the family, the first responders, everybody looking over your shoulder, expecting you to know what to do every time and be perfect every time. Well, there isn't any such animal.
But there are going to be critics out there. They're going to, just like there were, critics of, EMS when it first came out. I mean, I was a medical student at the time that all of that became popular, and, there was criticism from the local funeral home operators about how this was going to cut into their business and things like that. So, I think it's relatively easy to be a critic. I don't think it's terribly easy to be a critic and then become part of the solution.
It's constant. That's why, like I say, that 6.5 hours in the cockpit that day was a long day. Statistically, I've heard that 1 hour in that cockpit is about like 4 hours of driving a car. So you figure 6.5 hours, that's 25, 26 hours of driving a car. How tired would you be?
I have a cross out on Old Burke Road out there. A young lady was hurt in a car wreck. I got her back to the hospital. She died in surgery. Well, they put a cross up there, and that's been 5-6 years ago now. And I put a teddy bear with a paramedic out on the cross. And go by there, and it gets dirty or whatever. I change it and all that. I'll never forget watching that mom and dad outside that ER room, and I knew the girl wasn't going to make it. And that just made me want to go home, hug my family. There isn't enough money to pay you to look in the eyes of a dead child. There isn't enough money to get you time after time after time to see death the way that we do. When you have that good call and you can make a difference and they do end up living, golly, it's really special. We take it real personal. The call will come where I will go, it's enough. I've had enough. I've thought I've had enough several times. And one time I had 3 children in one day, and none of them made it. Or 2 of them didn't, and the third one, I was working on an ambulance. We flew it out to Fort Worth, and the next day I had another one. It didn't make it. The next day I had another one, and it didn't make it. My wife was working at the hospital, and she came to my quarters, and I said, I've had it. I've had it. This is enough. There was a knock on the door, and the doctor opened. And he said, they made it. So I'm still doing it, or I wouldn't be doing it. It's, one of those deals.
You never know what's going to happen or where it's going to happen.
You let your knowledge and your experience carry you through, and the adrenaline doesn't play into it, and I think that's very important. Here I obviously jump ship, and I see myself doing this for a long time. One arena or another, I'll be involved in EMS or emergency medicine.
I'm working on advancing my career. I would like to become a CRNA, so probably as long as I can until I go into a master's program. It's something that's in your blood for, once it's there, you're stuck with it. When I left Las Vegas, I never thought I would fly again, and then they came and put a helicopter in my backyard. It's kind of hard not to fly, because it's an enjoyable, fabulous job.
The pressures are always there. It was a different type of pressure, and let's face it, back then, I was a young and 19, 20-year-old, bulletproof, and I thought I was anyway, but as one thing I read a while back, in order to be old and wise, you got to first be young and stupid. Well, yeah, I was young and stupid then in many respects, but I think I've learned a lot, and still learning, and having a good time doing what I'm doing.